Today's webinar, Scott's going to go over these items in the budgeted cash flow. He's going to go through creating unlimited budgets and actually really focus on 2026 budget and probably getting started with that for those who have traction and have information in from 2025. It would make a lot of sense to use those values from 2025 as a starting point for 2026 cash flow budget. Scott's going to kind of walk you through all that. He's also going to go through the projected cash flow position month by month, do the budget versus actual, and then at the very end, go through how to print this budget, how to export it out. Perhaps you want to get into a spreadsheet and share it with somebody else. You can easily do that in Traction. So without further ado, Scott, I will let you take over.
Okay, just quick introduction for myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Scott Nussbaum. I'm one of the founders of Traction. I was an ag CPA many years ago, helped start up FarmWorks in 1993. I worked with FarmWorks and eventually Trimble up until it was closed in 2019. Basically, when Trimble shut down FarmWorks, my goal is to really go out and find a good ag-based accounting software and build a kind of consulting business around it. And when I really couldn't find anything out there, I got together with Brian and we started Traction. So focus today I'm going to go through is how you build a budgeted cash flows in Traction. So the budgeted cash flows area, this was a new feature that we added, I think it was October timeframe. And where you'll go to see this is on the left, you're going to go to reports, you'll go to accounting, and there's a budget area where you can do budgeted cash flows. So anybody's created a market value balance sheet. The budgeted cash flows are kind of like the market value area in that you build the report. So when you click on it, if you've created a budget in the past, we're going to default to showing that first budget that you created so that you can see it in here. It's always going to default to the last one that you're looking at. If you haven't made a budget yet, the screen will just be blank and kind of tell you to make a new one. So the drop-down list here, this will give you a list of all the different budgeted cash flows that you've built. And then you can switch back and forth. There's no limit to the number of budgets you can build. I'll go through some different examples on that. To make a new budget or to create your first budget, you're just going to click the plus new and start your budget. So the budget is always going to do 12 months. So you're going to tell it the starting month. In my case, it's defaulting. I'm going to do a 26 budget. So I'm going to tell it 26 in January. If you're on a fiscal year, say a June fiscal year, you can have this starting as July, whatever time frame you want. It's just always going to be 12 months. You'll then pick and choose the entities that you want to use. So if you're going to do separate budgets for each of your entities, you can do a new one for each of the entities, or if you're doing a combined for all of them, you can pick the ones. I'm just going to pick these two here. And that's going to give a description for the budget. So Traction will kind of default the description. Description is how you're going to go to pick it out anytime you see it. So Traction will make a budget based off the year and off of kind of the entities that you've selected here. But a lot of times, like, you may want to add an extra description to this. So if this is, maybe I'm going to make 3 budgets. One is kind of my best case scenario, one is my worst case scenario, and one is my expected. I could put the word expected in there just so that I could kind of tell them apart. So when you do multiple copies of the same budget, which I'll kind of show you how to do towards the end, that's really where it's important to have that description so you can tell the difference in them. One of the nice things for the budget, and this is for those of you who've used Traction for the last year, is if I've been using Traction for all of 2025, probably what I want to do is use last year's values as a starting point for this next year's budget. So I'm going to tell it to copy from previous year's actual balance. And that's going to copy over all the 2025 revenue and expense values for each month. So when I click Save, it's now built that budgeted cash flow and I can see it here. So this is showing the budget. This is all based off last year's numbers as a starting point. So my case, I've just got a demo account, so there's not a whole lot of data in here, but this would show all the revenue and expenses. So it is only revenue and expenses from the prior year we copy over. We don't get asset sales, purchases, or anything else in there. So key to the budget, those actual numbers are a good place to start, but probably what I want to do is now go in and update it for what really happened. When I hit the edit button, this is going to take me into a big spreadsheet. I've got the different categories of areas that I'm budgeting. I can open, I'll start out with my revenue, and this will kind of show the different things that it's filled in here. So what I'll do, I'll just put in a few examples in here. We're going to take our corn sales. And this works just like a normal budget. What I'm doing is just typing. I hit the tab key and I can move to the next column, tab across, tab through, and put information in. So all this functions, if you're familiar with Google Sheets, Excel, something like that, kind of works like that I can type, I can tab through it. So putting values in, each time I put a value in a month, you'll notice it's going to change my total up here. So if I add another 100,000 into September, I get bumped up there. The other way you can do things, if I take maybe something like hedging gains and losses, I don't know how much my hedging gains and losses are going to be each month, but I want to factor in for my budget maybe $10,000 total. So what I can do if I type 10,000 in that total column, it's just going to split the difference between the months for me. So anything that's kind of paid evenly across the months, I can do that. Or even here, if I say 10,000, but I know December I'm going to have a lot more. Once I fill those values in, I can change them any way that I want to. So once I'm done with my revenue, I can go to my expenses. Same thing on my expenses. If I take something like fertilizer expense and say, okay, I'm going to spend some February, I'm just hitting my tab key to tab across, just deleting those amounts out. Maybe I expect to do my prepays kind of November and December. Can fill those in that way. Or if I take something like fuel, where I know I'm going to spend more in the spring and fall, but I'm really not sure what it's going to be. I know it's maybe 50,000 total. I can just put the 50,000 total and fills it all in. So one of the questions I'll get a lot on the budgeted cash flows, what happens if I get here and I find out I'm missing an account? Could be an expense account, could be a loan account. My case, I'm going to say, okay, professional fees. Geez, I never set up a professional fees account. How do I add that in? Any point in the budget to add these accounts, I'm just going to save the budget. So I do save and close. My report's kind of updated with all those values I put in. All I have to do then is go up to my chart of accounts, and I'm just going to add a new account. And this account is going to be an expense account. And it is professional fees. Save and close. And now if I go back to my budget and edit it and open up my expenses, I'll see down in there, there's my professional fees. I know January, February, March, I'll have some fees in there. You can put those in. So it's any point in here, I can just save the budget. I can always save it. When I go back and edit again in the future, that'll take me back to where I will left off at. I'm not going to do it here, but if you get a budget or maybe you've just gone in, the budgets are kind of nice in that everything you do in this area sits separate from the other things in your books. So anything you do in here is not going to affect your books, your tax reports, anything like that. So if you just want to get in and play around, you can play around with the budget. The delete button, I'm not going to do it now, but anytime those play projects, you just want to delete them, you can delete them. So the other key to budgeted cash flows is what we're trying to do is budget every place that we're receiving money and every place that we're going to spend money over the next 12 months. So included this would be any money that I had coming in from asset sales. If I know I've got some land I'm going to sell, equipment I'm going to sell, things like that, I could put that in under asset sales. In my case, let's say I'm expecting I'm going to buy a new tractor maybe in March. So my asset purchases, what I'm going to do is go down to my farm equipment account, say, okay, that tractor is going to cost me about $250,000. Now that 250, that's the total cost of it. Now, if I'm also going to say, okay, so that tractor, it's 250,000, but I expect I'm probably going to take out a loan for a big chunk of it. I'll go down to my new debt. And in the new debt, I've already set up, but this would be the spot where if you haven't set that loan up, I could go set it up now. I could go into my little tractor loan here for March, say maybe I'm going to borrow 200,000 on it. So what you'll see with that is that the overall effect on my cash, it's taken 250 out for the cost of the tractor, but it's added 200,000 in borrowed from the tractor. So the net effect on my cash is taken 50,000 out of it. The debt reduction side of it, you'll go in and put in all your loan payments. So if I take that tractor loan that I just set up, I don't know, but if I think the payments are going to be about 6,000 a month, I could say maybe 72,000. Those payments probably won't actually start until March, so I'm just going to tab and delete the payments out and have those amounts going through there. Other things you'll budget in here will be owner draws. So this wouldn't be if you pay yourself wages. This isn't really wages. This is anything extra. So this would be like family living, or if you pay yourself out dividends on a monthly basis, that's where you put them in there. So if I know that Traction Farms pays about 100,000 a year in dividends, I can put those in. And the key to all these budgeted amounts is going to be this bottom cash position area. So the cash position, what it's doing is each month is taking what the starting balance was at the start of that month. The change in the cash position is the total of all the values up above. So January, it's saying based off my budget, I'm going to be spending $16,000 more than what I'm taking in. Each of these months are the same way. And then the difference in those is my ending cash position. So this is always going to be telling me kind of where I should be, if that budget is right, where I should be in my cash position. So a couple things on this. You'll notice the beginning cash position, this number was filled in for me. So what Traction's going to do is it's going to look at all your bank and cash accounts minus any operating loans that are set up to work like a checking account. I think it subtracts out any credit card account balances too, and it puts that amount as your beginning cash position. So in my case, I had to start in the year with more borrowed on my operating loan than what I had in cash, and it's figured out that was about 88,000 that I was in the hole to start the year. Now, if your Traction books aren't quite right, you know this number's wrong, you can change it here. So if I know that's wrong, it's really 100,000, I can go ahead and just type over it and change it. Now the key is if you change it here, this isn't going to go back and change my books. It's not going to change my account registers or anything like that. It's just going to change it here for my budgeted cash flows. So this is a situation where I desperately need to get my budget done for the banker, and I know my books are kind of messed up right now. Lets me get the budget done. One last thing on this, if you go in and you change this number and you want to reset it, all you got to do is highlight it. I just double clicked on it, hit the delete key, and if I delete, it will reset it to what that value was. So it's all designed to put you back where you started. So all of this, really what this is designed to show me is if I'm budgeting for an operating loan, the negative values are the amounts that I'm going to have for the operating loan. The positive months are the months where I've got more cash than what I borrowed. So the goal with all this is going to be, I'm kind of looking this month by month, knowing when I need to be borrowing on my loan The other thing it should be telling me is do I have a big enough operating loan? So if this is showing that I'm going to need $108,000, my operating loan's $100,000, maybe I need to see about getting a bigger operating loan or looking at my budget and seeing what do I have wrong in here, what could I make cuts on, things like that. Once I've got it saved, I've got the report on the screen. The report, you can print it, you can export as a CSV. So a couple things here. That report, right now it's showing all the accounts in this report. In my case, there's some of these that I don't even have a budget for. So one of the nice things we've done is up above, I can go up and switch it from all accounts to non-zero accounts, say update report. This kind of gives me a cleaner looking report. So if you've got some accounts that just this year, maybe they're older accounts that you're not using anymore that you haven't activated yet, or accounts that you just don't want to include in this budget, this will get it down to where you're just looking at the budgeted values. The reports, everything you do is kind of what you see is what you get. So once I hit the print button, it's always going to show me the report as I've got it. And that's a report that I can either print or save it as a PDF. So if this is a budget for the banker, save it as a PDF, email it to the banker. So one of the other things you can do with this, in my case, 26 isn't a good example, but once you've got your budget up and going, probably what you're going to want to do is see how you're doing throughout the year compared to actual. So in my case, I created a 2025 budget. And as I'm going through that year, I want to see how did I actually do? How close was my budget to what I actually did? We've got this little option up above to do budgeted versus actual. When I do budgeted versus actual, this is going to show me kind of the top number's my budgeted value. The bottom highlighted number is my actual number. So this lets me kind of scan through and see where I had big differences in budgets and actual. Everything in here, if you want to do any deeper analysis on it, you can export as a CSV. So like this budget versus actual, some of the questions we've got is what if I want to do the math and actually see what the values are, the differences between those values. The report doesn't show it because there's a lot there, but if I export it as a CSV file, that'll give me a CSV that I could take into something like Excel or Google Sheets and do some things like that. So a couple other things is I've built this budget right here that's kind of my expected budget. What if now I want to go out and run some scenarios? What if I want to do a budget based off more revenue, that I kind of a higher revenue, expecting crop prices to be higher, or the opposite? Oh, is there a question there?
Scott, we did have some questions for you, but I'm not sure if you want to hit this first before we get into some of the questions or not.
Sure can.
A couple of questions regarding somebody's, they're not seeing the budgeted cash flow feature in their subscription. I think because they're probably running either basic or plus. So I know this is definitely a pro level feature. So can you kind of share, I guess, some areas of traction where that would be pretty obvious that they have pro or not?
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing, if you've got the pro level of traction, when you go to the accounting area, pro adds the accrual area where you've got like a balance sheet, accounts receivable report. There's market value in here, budget. Those are probably the biggest areas you would see. I mean, the other areas you'd see is like the invoices tab is in the pro level, but the reports is probably the quick. If you're not seeing market value or budget, that means you wouldn't have the pro level of traction, probably plus.
Yeah, and I think that the couple of people here asking that question, I believe they have the plus level and not the pro. Other question here from Mark dealing with the family living categories. Is there any way to import family living from previous year before editing with a breakdown on individual categories?
It does not do individual categories. It's just going to do the total on that side of it. So it will do the actual, like in my case, I believe we fill the actual totals with it. I could be wrong on that, but I believe we do the totals with it, just not the individual categories. Okay, so go ahead and I'll show another situation is, let's say I'm going to make a new budget. I want to take this budget that I just created, use that as a starting point, and go in and change some of the numbers. So I'm going to go in and make a new budget. I'll do 26 again, pick the same two entities, and I'm going to call this best case. And I'm just going to leave this as a blank budget. So when I do save, see it's a blank budget in there. When I go to edit, there's an option up above to fill cells. And fill cells, I can go in and fill that with my 2026 expected values. Click save. This is going to override everything. In my case, I haven't done anything, so that's no big deal. But if I actually started it and filled it, it would overwrite the budget. So now I've got all my budgeted values in here. Again, I'm just going to hide in my case. I don't want to show actual anymore. I'm just going to show budgeted. So here's where I could go in and say, if this is my best case scenario, maybe I bump everything up by 50%. And I can see the values down below in my cash position based off that. So there's no limit to the number of budgets you can have. You can always go in and do these fill cells. That fill cells, that process I went through, that's kind of a nice way if you want to play around too. So if you've got a budget you've already built and you want to kind of go in and just kind of play around with different numbers, you can do anything you want with that. When you're all done, just click the delete and get rid of it. So any other questions on budgets?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can use the chat button to ask the questions.
It's being too quiet. I'm talking too fast, Brian.
Oh, you're doing great.
I think one other feature that's a little different from market value, we do like these names, the date ranges, things like that. If you start a budget and you realize you want to change the name or change the date range, when you go to edit, there is a configure button up here. And that configure button lets me go back. So if I started that budget and I did the wrong starting month, the wrong year, I can change it, can change the names, change the entities, things like that. So just edit it, go to that little gears button, and you can change things there. Brian, I think I've covered everything that I was expecting to cover.
Yeah, I'm just curious from the audience today, has anyone started using this feature and any feedback on it? Oh, we do have a question from Randy here, Scott. If you change
Yes,
corn sales, can you do it in the first column? Does it change all 12 months or just 3 you had numbers in?
it will. In that case, if I change the number, it is going to prorate it across there. It's not just going to change the months that are in it. So any point like that, if I do something and I didn't want to do it, best bet to get back where I was, just cancel and then go back and do it. So that save and close, I would say that save and close is just kind of like a Word document or something like that, that I can always save it. If I cancel out after that, it can go back to the last time I saved it. So, but it will. The total will always go across the 12 months. Good questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Tom had a comment that he's played with it a little bit, but not near enough. So now's the perfect time to do it. If you have had some of this bad weather like we've had in Northeast Indiana, you might be trapped in your house. So perhaps now's a great time to play around with this feature. And as Scott mentioned earlier, you really can't mess it up. I mean, you can create new ones, you can copy them, you can delete them. So it's really an area that you can get in there and do whatever you want. Yeah, some nice comments here, Scott. Yeah, first time seeing Traction looks great. I've encouraged some clients to start using Traction Ag. Yeah, thank you, Trent. And, we have a comment here from Mark again. He just wanted to say that he feels budgeting of family living is just as important as the actual farm budgeting, especially with health insurance and the increase in living expenses. So that's a really, really nice comment from Mark.
Something we can look at for the future for sure.
Yep. And Mitch has another question here or comment. Family living is not broken out in owner draw. Did you catch that, Scott?
Yeah, that'd be the same thing. That it really is designed today just to be the totals on it. It doesn't break out individual amounts. So that would be correct as it is today. Something for us to look at for the future.
Yeah, it looks like we have a lot of people that know it's there, but maybe they just haven't had time to really deep dive into it. So hopefully the quick webinar this morning gave you a few extra tips. I know I picked up a couple of things, Scott, especially with the starting. Um, at the very end there, you had the where you deleted the starting cash position and you accidentally put a number in there. You want to get back to the original value. I guess I wasn't aware of that you could delete that and then have it reappear what it originally was. It's a good tip. Yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah, another comment there about just getting started. Happy with what he sees so far. Another question here from John. Do you need Pro to do market value balance sheet?
You do, yes. So yeah, it would be the main thing in this accounting reports, market value budget, and then the accrual. There's more reports in this accrual area if you've got Pro versus plus.
Yeah, and there's a main reason there for that, right, Scott, is because that market value balance sheet is really like a copy of your accrual balance sheet when first getting started with it. So in order to have any sort of like accrual accounting, that's where that pro level comes into play. I guess our thought was some people don't really need accrual accounting, therefore you don't have to purchase that level of traction if you don't need it. But yeah, if you start getting into market value balance sheet, accrual reports, budgeted cash flow, that's all part of the Traction Pro level. Have another comment here for you, Scott. How can I see what version or level of the program from the home screen?
I don't think we've got that. I'm not, this is an area I'm not involved with, but I don't think other than the options that are there, there's anything that'll tell you that. I don't think so.
Another question from Mark. Great spreadsheets. Where can you put previous year's starting balance?
For the budget, I guess I'm not sure on that. Budget, when I fill with actual, that'll always give for each of the accounts, when I do that copy from previous year's balances, that'll put the actual there for it. Otherwise, like when you do, if I just edit, go back to the budget I had. When I edit the beginning cash position, this would be whatever Traction had on the book. So if I look at probably the easiest place at 87,999, if I do a cash balance sheet and I pick the same entities, I set this to the end of this year, that is going to be the total bank and cash accounts 224 minus, in this case, a line of credit. So that'd be really where it's coming from. It's the balance. Those all would be typed if I went to my account registers off the account registers, but that's what it'll use for that starting balance. So that starting balance looks wrong. I would look at this cash balance sheet, start looking at your individual accounts. And if one of these accounts looks like the wrong balance, you can just click on it there and that'll take you to the account register for that, where you could see where that balance is coming from. So I'm not sure if that's answering the question there.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself as well if it's easier to do it that way.
Hello, Scott.
Yes.
Yes, a lot of times put a box in before the spreadsheet starts to put the ending balance of the previous year. Um, Trying to come up with that number sometimes is pretty tough, as you said, trying to find the balance from the different categories to actually show the operating as well as cash balances. So you have the starting position of all cash available or borrowed.
Yeah, and the cash balance sheet, that one is probably the nicest on it, just setting it to the end of the previous year. The reason I like the cash balance sheet on it is that all you got to do is click on accounts to go to the account register. So it's easy to kind of see the totals here, and then anything in these areas that seems wrong, like that 310,000 I've got borrowed on the operating loan, I can click on it and that takes me down into the account register with all the details on it. So that cash balance sheet would be the best place for kind of seeing those. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
This is Vince. I hope I didn't miss this early, but you talked about the ability to do uh, multiple budgets or budgets for different entities. And then is there a way to summarize that all of those separate budgets then too, so we could look at it as a whole, not just as the piece by entity?
There's not. That's an interesting suggestion, but if you do it individual entity by individual entity, there's no way to combine them together. Um, No, I think the only way to do that then would actually be exporting the CSV, doing it with Excel or something like that. So something for us to look at for the future for sure.
No problem. Sometimes we look at it as the cash requirements, kind of across everything and work it out between entities. So I appreciate it.
Cool.
We had another question about market value balance sheet. So we did a webinar about market value balance sheet. It's been a few weeks ago, right, Scott? We did a
Was,
pretty
I think,
in-depth
earlier.
one. John, I'll send you the link to that recording. And for anyone else who wants that recording, again, we always send out the recordings through an email after the webinars, but if you want that particular webinar recording, you can just put that in the chat here. I'll see your name there and I'll make sure you get that. I think, Scott, we have some people here that have the basic, or a lot of them have just the plus level, which is the middle level of traction. And so there's probably a little bit of confusion on what and why somebody would consider upgrading to the pro level. This kind of goes back to when we first started the company back in 2020, when we started thinking about how to split out these different modules. So people who maybe don't want accrual accounting, they don't have to have it, they don't need it. So why purchase that? But I think what happens a lot of times, people realize they really need that level or want that level. Perhaps they don't realize it right now, but when you start thinking about invoicing and payables and prepays and accrual accounting report type of things, that's where that pro level comes into play, and that's where, again, I think a lot of people in this session don't have it, so they're just kind of debating whether to upgrade to the pro level, or I'm not in sales, but perhaps your account manager can give you a free trial on pro and let you try it out for a little bit before you buy it. But I think those are some of the kind of questions that we're getting through the chat here, Scott.
No, I think the one thing to say, if you've been on pro at least, probably not basics, or wouldn't be as much. If you switch to, or if you've been on plus and switch to pro, Traction's got most of the data there. So we will be able to start some of the values in pro into plus as using the inventory values for accrual and market value balance sheet. So like all your harvested crop and input values, those will carry into that market value balance sheet. So if you go from plus to pro, you're not starting over from scratch. The data you've got kind of carries into it.
Yeah, I had another question here about the recordings today. So yeah, there is actually two places that we store the webinar recordings. We have a YouTube channel that we upload the webinar recordings to. So if you go to the the Traction Ag YouTube channel. You'll be able to find them there. Also, we have another spot called Vimeo that we upload the videos to. And for the emails that go out today, I'll make sure there's a link in the email that takes you to all of them. So that way you get access to all those. Mitch, that was a very good question. Something I didn't really think about, so I'll make sure we include a link to all the recordings moving forward. Yeah, Scott, I think if you just go to the Traction Ag, if you just click on Traction Ag, I think that'll take you to our channel. Any other questions for Scott? Really appreciate the questions today. This has been a lot of fun. Yep. Marianne, I'll make sure you get that. Yep, Vince, we'll make sure you get the webinar for the market value. Anyone on this meeting will get a link to it, so you'll have access to it. All right, not seeing any other questions here. Okay, so just to kind of close out today's webinar, this was the last one for 2025. So the next one we'll have is January 8th, which we'll be talking about 1099s. It's getting that time of year to be thinking about how to create those and submit them and that kind of thing. So we've got a couple of webinar options for tackling your 1099s. So would love to have you on those webinars. And like I mentioned at the very start of this particular webinar, we just were looking for ideas. So Scott and I were talking about it this morning. We're kind of hoping the group today would give us some different ideas of future webinars, topics that might interest you. We'd love to hear that. So if you had any ideas, suggestions for us for webinar topics, feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll see about including the one that you might want to look at or want more information on in the future. Great turnout today, by the way. This is definitely our largest webinar to date, so we've really enjoyed it. Very good. We'll close her down today. Appreciate you all for joining, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thank you.